Welcome to our special podcast series for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, running from November 25th to December 10th, with your host, Charmin Prince. And together, we'll shine a light on some of the urgent issues of gender-based violence. In this series, we'll delve into personal stories, legal insights, and share vital resources that empower individuals and communities to take action. Our goal is to raise awareness, ignite conversations, and advocate for change in our societies. Join us as we embark on this critical journey to stand against violence, uplift survivors, and promote a world free from fear and abuse. Let's get started.
Thank you for joining us for the final episode of the Anything Gender podcast series for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, where we amplify the voices of subject experts and we raise awareness about the urgent issues of gender-based violence. And today is no exception. We delve into the theme that says Act Now for 2024. Now, as we conclude this impactful series, it's a call to each of us to take action, to stand together, and to advocate for a world free from violence and discrimination. Today, join me in welcoming Stellah Bosibori, who is a seasoned advocate at the High Court of Kenya. She brings over 12 years of expertise in international law, particularly focusing on human rights and international criminal law. She holds a master's degree in public international law from the University of Nairobi. Stellah passionately champions the rights of marginalized groups, especially women, in areas like sexual and reproductive health rights and economic empowerment. Currently, Stellah is serving as a prosecutor with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP. She is dedicated to creating impactful policy change and fostering inclusive conversations about gender. Now, help me welcome Stellah. Welcome to the Anything Gender podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Charmin, for having me. It is great that we are having this conversation. It is very timely, especially it is during the 16 days of activism to end GBV globally. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add to your bio?
Actually, you've said it well. I am happy to be part of this movement, a positive, impactful movement where we have these conversations amongst leaders, team members, to see the gains, the progress achieved, and the gaps in ending GBV globally. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And on that note, where do we currently stand in the global fight against gender-based violence?
Thank you, Charmin, for that question. I know different sectors globally, different, like I can say continentally, each region has come up with its own instrument to address GBV. We have the Universal Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. CEDAW is like the global umbrella, of course, with UDHR, the Human Rights Convention, the general. SIDO is the basis, and it is specific to women. It is specific to addressing all forms of discrimination against women. It came into force some time back. It's not a recent document. Let me just confirm something on the date that it came into force. It has been in existence for a while, but yet, even with SIDO as the foundation of all these other treaties, yes, we still have GBV to date. Even in developed countries, we still have GBV, and GBV keeps morphing. It used to be just discrimination based on gender. So in terms of earning in employment, women were earning less in America, in the other European countries. But now there are institutions that, yes, they have leveled up on that, but still there's discrimination. It gave birth to the Maputo Protocol in Africa and the Istanbul Convention in Europe. But still, those two, they were meant to address the unique, on top of the other general human rights violations facing women, the two were meant to address unique challenges. For Maputo, it was meant to address unique challenges affecting African women, such as property ownership, right to sexual reproductive health, right to work, to abolish the harmful cultural practices. Yet, we're in the 21st century, but still, these cultural practices, these harmful cultural practices are still being practiced on the young girls. So as much as we have the tool to protect our women and girls, there are still gaps. I know for a fact this GBV monster keeps morphing, because now we are talking about online, technologically facilitated GBV. It may not be addressed directly in these instruments, so it keeps morphing. It comes in many forms. It can start online and then it trickles down to the physical. But even the basic ones that are being protected, they have not been addressed fully. We still have women who cannot access healthcare in the 21st century. We still have women who, before they make the decision on whether to use contraceptives or not, they have to get permission from their husbands. Yet it is their bodies. So a lot more needs to be done. Yes, we have the tools, and some of these tools have been domesticated by the relevant states within the region or globally. But in terms of enforcement, we still have gaps. Yes, so that is where we are at globally.
Thank you so much, Stellah, for that. You raised so many points. You highlighted the two treaties that are actually in place for women to protect us, but it's not being enforced.
Mm-hmm.
How can we as advocates rally to ensure at least those two treaties are enforced in the places where we are?
One way I would say is this: it takes a team effort for this monster to be actually addressed. It is not a one man or one woman problem. When we come together, different institutions, that means communities, NGOs, international and local, and even the government, if we come together, we have this particular goal of addressing this particular challenge. That is one very good way of combating and addressing GBV. One of the ways I've seen work, we identify the problem. So, for example, the problem is maternal health. Why are many women losing lives when giving birth? Because they cannot access hospitals. This is just an example. So what can we do as the community, as stakeholders, to address this problem? We come together, we get funding to maybe provide we train the local community on the first aid. They're called community health workers, how to take care of expectant women. We train the midwives on how to safe deliveries. We equip hospitals within the local communities. We offer vehicles, ambulances, so that this challenge can be addressed. So one way is through funding, proper funding to mitigate. Sorry, I thought I closed this. Let me just do it again. We address this by we identify the problem, we get funding, and we support the communities. Another way is identifying the gaps in these laws. We've adopted these instruments to our local legislative. They are tailor-made to be implemented, not just to be shelved somewhere, but actually to be implemented. We relook at ourselves, we analyze, we take steps back. So this is the law. Where are the gaps? What are the challenges? Is it in terms of enforcement? Is the problem, say, the police officers in investigating cases of GBV, sexual and the normal gender, not the normal, the other gender-based violence cases, the normal assaults, murder? So is it the police officers, the investigative agencies who lack the proper and adequate training? Or is it the actors, the wider criminal justice sector, for example, who have a problem in addressing and dealing with this issue? Once we identify these gaps, then we can be able to rectify by identifying best practices, for example, of how to apply. We compare other jurisdictions, what has worked for them. We try and see whether we can adopt. We start like a pilot project. We see whether we can adopt and we monitor the progress. If it is gradual, it is improving. If it is positive, we can say it is working. We've been able to address FGM, for example. How do we do this? We've educated the communities. We have told them the importance of education, and we are giving free food to schools so that these children who are forced to get married so that they can fend for the families can access education. So you've empowered the entire community. That is the second way. Keeping data is also very important. Data informs policy. Data helps us to know where we are, what are the challenges, and how best to address these challenges. Without accurate data on what is there, what is working, what is not working, we cannot really see the map in a broader perspective of where exactly is our problem in fighting this monster. So keeping accurate data informs us as policymakers, as civil society, on how best to support our survivors. Another solution will be empowering the survivors. We find in most jurisdictions, let me even talk of Kenya, we have talked so much about the right of an accused person, we've forgotten about the survivor or the victim in these crimes. So when a victim goes to report, for example, at a police station, it ends there. But the criminal, the suspect, is so much protected within our laws so that they are aware of their rights from inception to the time of conviction. But the victim never gets psychosocial support. If they are not able to afford proper medical treatment, the basic first aid that they'll get during the reporting stage is the only treatment they'll ever get. No, there is no psychosocial support. There is not review unless you have money to go and seek proper medical help. So that is also a challenge, supporting our survivors. It helps them by empowering them. It helps them heal, and even holding other victims' hands. Like, we did it. This is the system. I trust it. Come forward. I hold your hand. We move forward. And then we fight this fight together. Another way is embracing that GBV keeps morphing. It started as assault. It went to murder. Now we are talking about TFGBV. TFGBV, it can start from the gadgets, technology, and it morphs to physical violence. It can morph to rape. It can morph to defilement, sodomy. It can go to even murder. So how do we address this? We can do capacity building and community engagements to educate the users of technology. Technology is supposed to assist us. It is not supposed to be a monster. It came to help and ease in our work. But when we use or abuse technology, and at the end of the day perpetuate it helps perpetuate crimes, then it is not beneficial to our communities. So yes, we've made progress in terms of addressing GBV globally, but the gaps that are there can be filled when we hold hands together to fight GBV.
Thank you so much, Stellah. You've raised so many points. The importance of partnership and team and collaborating. I want to touch on that a little. I want to touch on the funding, because oftentimes we're unable to do the things that we want to do or we desire to do, or can I say the most effective intervention to address the social problems that we might be talking about. The problem that I always hear is lack of funding. And my response to that, are we gonna allow a lack of funding to hinder us from saving the women on the other side? With that being said, is there any way we can partner? I'm talking about globally. Women can partner and collaborate together to do at least 2 or 3 things that does not include funding, so that we can at least save one woman's life. We have been here for 20 minutes, and in those 20 minutes, 2 women have died.
Imagine.
So what can we do as women globally who are fortunate enough to hear this podcast? It could be simply knowing our rights as women so that we can teach others. Maybe pooling our monies together and training doulas to avoid maternal deaths. You know, so my question to you, is there anything that you can suggest that we can do to further the cause of women's rights?
Thank you, Shamin, for that question. Very important question. I know most organizations rely on funding to do this, but I feel like sometimes, I'm so sorry, let me just mute.
You have to mute it.
Most times they have muted it. I know funding is key in many organizations for them to drive forward their agenda, but I feel there are other things we can do in our small spaces without necessarily having funding. One way to do this, I know the aspect of GBV, it's societal. It starts from the family, the patriarchal beliefs, the bad norms that we are raised knowing. If we start changing these norms in our small communities, educating the boy child and the girl child that we are all equal, there is no gender that is stronger or superior or better than the other. We should live as a family. If it starts from the family base, it can grow. This is a seed that you planted. You nurture it, it grows, and it flourishes. So starting these talks within our families is also important. We can expand these to even our school programs. We create forums where we engage the children themselves. They come up with this. We have discussions around these norms, the gender bad norms, and we tell them through discussions why this is not considered good. Because we tell them, you have sisters at home. Would you want this to hear such a story happening to your sister, your brother, not even that stranger you don't know? When we inculcate this in our education programs, it is also a seed we've planted. It grows and it nurtures, so that the next generation will protect our women, will protect our girls, because they've known, they have experienced, they've been taught the right thing to do. And thirdly, in our larger communities, our churches, I know culture and religion, they have an impact, and they have like a following or an audience who they listen to. if we have like a sessions during the after church or during the other religious institutions where communities get engaged, and we have these dialogues about the bad harmful practices, because I know sometimes they are intertwined between the bad harmful practices and culture and religion. For example, early childhood marriages, female genital mutilation. It may be intertwined in some communities with the religion, so that you're told, you may think this is culture, but if you look in your religious book, it is nowhere. Uh, it is not anywhere, so that you're being misled. When the church is engaged and it has a wider audience, then we can change the norms, change the mindsets of people, and that way we see we are addressing the issue of GBV within our communities. And even as the small communities around, say in the interior places, they can come together. I can give an example of, say, like Narok, it's in Kenya, where they used to practice FGM. The communities come together, they decide, like the women groups, instead of allowing our daughters to go through the cut, let us empower these cutters so that we train them on a new skill. They can remake or re-earn their livelihoods through something else and stop this practice. I'm so sorry, it keeps... we can empower them and retrain them on other skills that can bring them incomes which are self-sustaining, so that they abandon these harmful practices of performing FGM on our girls, and they do other things, and they also become tools of change to the other cutters. That is one way we empower the communities, we empower the women, the persons who are considered the main actors of these GBV perpetrators. That way, the community is empowered. Yes.
Thank you so much. Wow. I love the tools of change. You mentioned socialization of our boys and girls, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but Iceland has the most effective socialization process, and I would say gender neutral, if I can use that term, because it can mean so many things. And there is a video on YouTube that is powerful, and I usually promote it despite they are not paying me to do so, because of how effective it is, where boys are permitted to embrace what we call feminine side, like their emotions, and they can do tasks that we stereotypically assign to women, and vice versa. It is one of the most powerful and effective preventative tool that I've seen for GBV, starting from secondary socialization. And I think if many of our countries can adopt that, we will be able to see a reduction in GBV. Because as you mentioned, the social norms, the other day I cringe hearing an college-educated woman tell a 2-year-old, little girls must be seen and not heard. And I was re-traumatized because I was told that ever so often. And when you grow up, when you get older, despite people think those norms does not affect us, as a woman, you question, should I be saying something? Because you were muzzled at such a young age. So, thank you for raising that. I want to touch it. But I have other questions pertaining to human rights that I think it's more permanent. So I just highlighted it, more pertinent. So I just highlighted those points and want you to know that I really think that they are vital to the elimination of violence against women and girls. How do we include men in this discussion about GBV?
Thank you for that question. And it's good that you brought it out. For the longest time, when you mention GBV, it's associated with women. But GBV is not a women's issue only. Gender is male, female, by gender, it cuts across. Only that women are more, they speak out more, they seek help more. For most, especially in the African culture, when a man goes to seek help on an issue of GBV, he's considered weak. And that is where the problem has been. So men have not really been coming out to get help to talk about this problem. But I realize in our communities, men play a key role in our decision making, in everything we do. And for these changes to happen and to be effective, we have to use the men as the tools, the frontline tools. Why? Because if a man stands and speaks, I have daughters, I do not want them to undergo the cut, the community will view it very differently. If this is coming from a man, it means he has really come to terms with the fact that this is wrong. But if it's a woman speaking, they don't really consider it serious. It's like, this is just a women's issue. They don't understand. And other cultures bar women from talking. Like you said, when you are growing up, you should not talk in front of people, just you're there to be seen. It makes you feel like you're gagged. You can't really, when a woman stands to talk, people will question, they'll give you names. And that is why we've even had problems with many women coming forward to take up political leadership positions because of their upbringing. But now, if we take a backseat, we train these men, we capacity build them, and show them the harmful effects of these vices and how it affects, we bring it home to them. We bring it home to them in such a way that if this were to happen to your daughter, how would you react? Then they'll start changing their mindsets on this issue of GBV. And when we put them in the front line as this, we want you to be our soldiers, the frontline soldiers. Fight for us this battle. That is the first step of addressing GBV. We've been doing it the women way. Yes, we've had progress, but I've seen in communities where we engage men more, we see more impact. They are the ones who stop these harmful practices because they are the voices of the communities. I know in some religions, it is the man who's the head. He's considered the head, the homemaker, the protector. So if this man is given that chance, if he's equipped and told, speak for us, we are behind you, they'll take it up and they'll run with it and they'll do it well. And if this is also starts with the boys, growing up, you're told there's no gendered role. If you wash utensils, it does not make you less of a boy. If you cook, it does not make you less of a boy. You will grow up and you'll have daughters and you'll want to teach them how to cook. Suppose you enjoy cooking and you want to be a chef. It is not a female career. If they grow up knowing these things, not being abnormal, then we are bringing up a better society for the future generation, for our world. So yes, the men should be in the front line because they are our support. Yeah.
Thank you so much. What is one way that we can bring them into the advocacy space? One way that we can attract them?
When I noticed that whenever we have these meetings, the various platforms, the men are not really involved. Come join this conversation. Let us hear your point of view so that we start seeing where their perspective, then we come up with solutions together. We sit together as women. Yes, it's our problem. We consider it's our problem because it's our women and it is us who are the victims. But when we bring them in these conversations and actually listen to them and listen to where they are coming from and have these dialogues together and come up with solutions together, not just from a women's perspective, even from the male perspective. That is one very good way of actually addressing the issue of GBV. These conversations we've never really involved the men in the grassroots, because that is where it actually happens. We make our policies and decisions in boardrooms. We come, boom, this is it. This is what we've decided. This is what we want the government to do for us. But these men were not there. And sometimes they are the politicians, they pass this legislation because they have other interests. It's a women's issue, yes, but I want support from women, not because he's a man and he thinks it's the right thing to do. These politicians sometimes have their own other interests. But if we engage these men and they give us the solutions and we dialogue together, and then when we go when we go with them to inculcate, to train, to engage, they are with us together, they are holding our hand, then probably that is one way of starting to solve this problem differently. Because I know men and boys play a key role in fighting this war. Yes.
Thank you so much for answering that question. How can we teach men women's rights?
Sometimes I feel like the best way is through the practical experience. If I give you like a law, this is the Sexual Offences Act, it is just wording. You cannot relate with it. Because even this, even assault cases, for example, in some cultural beliefs, women used to think being beaten or chastised is a form of love. And they strongly believed if my husband does not beat me, it means he does not love me. So you go and provoke and make sure this man beats you, but he's violating you. And you'll find sometimes this man, he does not want to do it. He's a gentleman. He grew up in a different environment. He never saw it. But he feels like for there to be peace in this homestead, and this is what this woman wants, let me chastise her. It's wrong. We have to show them the reality. I said about data. The number of women who die per hour, per minute because of GBV. The number of women, even young girls, who are raped, defiled, the most vulnerable, 3 years and below. We show them this data, and we show them the effects of GBV on this girl child, to adulthood. Some of them, they are damaged, their sexual organs, because of this violation. They need surgery. It costs money. If this grind picture is presented to these men, they will probably understand this problem better, because they've actually interacted with the actual thing, how it acts, how it manifests, the effects or the psychological impact to this victim, physically, psychologically, emotionally. If they're able to see this, then maybe they'll relate with it better and start addressing it from a different perspective. Because when we talk about GBV and they see it's a women's issue, it is out there, it cannot come to my home. But when we bring it home, we tell them this victim was defiled by a stepfather in the home, in the place considered safe. Then they'll start thinking differently. This is someone's child. I also have a daughter. If the same thing were to happen to my child, how would it affect me? How would I take it? So I've seen when men, they are very aloof to this GBV. They say GBV things because this is not my problem. But when you bring the reality, I'll bring you a case. I'll tell you, I have this case. This happened to a child. It is the uncle who did this. They live in the same hold. This is the brother to the man. So when you bring this home, the reality sinks in, like, yeah, this is a bad thing. So what can I do to address this problem, to solve this problem? When you bring the picture home to the actual ground, it will help them change their mindsets about GBV. And it will help them be soldiers in this war. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow. So why aren't we doing that? I try to bring men to the table. But I think culture prevents men from taking steps behind a woman. Those norms and stereotypes, I think the importance of getting men into these spaces and having other men teach them, talk to them is more effective than us talking to them and bringing them into a room. I love what you said about bringing them into a room and just giving them data. It's a fascinating intervention. It's a fascinating idea, one that I never thought of, and I'll be following up with you about that. But thank you for that. I really think that was, man, well, everyone know that I like to say genius. That was a genius response, something that I never thought of. Before we wrap up, Stellah, what are some rights that we should become familiar with so that we can teach other women?
Generally, I can say for women, and probably this affects maybe many women in Africa, the right to own property. Most women assume by virtue of you being married, whatever you acquire should be in your husband's name. And sometimes because of harmful cultural practices, when this man dies, the in-laws come and repossess everything, and you're left there with your children with nothing. And you worked so hard together with this man to acquire this property. So the right to own property, women should know they have that right. It is engraved in the Maputo Protocol in their legislation about ownership of property. The right to proper healthcare, access to good healthcare services is a right of every woman. That means proper maternal facilities, access good hospitals, you get a trained medical personnel to attend to you. Giving birth at home, yet you have, because of cultural practices, you feel like you cannot expose yourself to a male doctor, you are violating your own right. It is your right to have good medical services given to you by your state. The other right is the abolition of harmful cultural practices, the FGM, child marriages. It is a violation of our girls. Every child has the right to proper, adequate education. No child should have to undergo female genital mutilation and missing school because of these harmful cultural practices. And this mostly affects our girls. The other rights that every woman should know, there are those rights that you are born with. You don't need to register somewhere so for you to know that. You have the right to life. No one should take your life or your freedom of movement, except in some circumstances. No one should threaten your life. That man who keeps telling you, if you go and report me, I will kill you, he's violating your right. He is not the person who gave you that right. So every woman should know that they have the right to life and to enjoy that life. The right to choose your vocation. I know sometimes circumstances force women and they become vulnerable. You see, lack of proper education may lead to trafficking because you're promised better living conditions, better jobs. But then this is someone who is probably taking advantage of you and selling you off. And you go to another country thinking you're going for greener pastures, and you go there and you get abused and you get violated. You have the right to choose to live in your country, to choose the vocation you want, that business, that job that you want to do. That right, you have it within you, and to make that decision. I know this also affects young girls who you're sold off or you're taken and so that you can make a living to support your families. It is also wrong. Women, and especially young girls, should know that the minimum age for marriage is 18 years. No child should be forced to get married when you're below 18 years. You're still a child. No one should take advantage of you. You have the right to enjoy your childhood. and grow up in a normal family, so that enjoy that. When the time is right, you move to the next level. No woman should be discriminated based on their gender. You don't get paid in equal measure as the men because of your gender. You don't get the same opportunities because of your gender, in terms of education, in terms of employment, in terms of even medical facilities. Everyone should know they should not be discriminated against at all based on their gender. Yes.
Wow. Thank you. Excuse my ignorance, but I never knew that the very first one that you highlighted, I never knew that happened to African women.
Oh, it
You
does.
know, and the in-laws come and take the property that she worked for. Okay. That's for another episode for us to discuss. But for women globally, would you recommend the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Because, of course, today is International Human Rights Day. So, is the Universal Declaration, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is that a good tool to help us to understand our human rights?
Yes, it is. It has been adopted, I think, globally. It is considered customary. It covers all human rights. The good thing with that declaration, it does not distinguish the gender. It guarantees your rights by virtue of being a human being. And it is because of that these other conventions and treaties were given birth to. It gave birth to this. So yes, it should be considered a tool, a proper tool to protect our women globally. It defines the rights of women as guaranteed globally. Whichever country you go to, there are those basic human rights that cannot be denied to you by virtue of being a human being. Yes. So it should be adopted. Yes.
Thank you. So we will have all the links to the different treaties and the UN Declaration. We'll have all of that in the show notes. Is there anything you would like to leave with our listeners, Stellah?
I can tell the listeners, be change makers. Be change makers. When you see someone's right being violated, or when you see these harmful or bad norms being inculcated in our children, be the voice. Change these norms. It starts with us. Change starts with us. Let us move forward the positive so that we can have a better future for the next generation. Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been the last episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. I'm your host, Charmin Prince, and be sure to follow us.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. We hope today's discussions inspired you to take action and support those affected by gender-based violence. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave us a review. Your voice is crucial in spreading awareness and advocating for change. Stay connected with us on social media at Eagles Empower to Soar, EETS, and visit our website at www.eaglesoar.org. For more resources and information, let's continue this important conversation and work together to create a safer world for all. Until next time, take care and stand strong against violence.